Rach, we are sat in the shadows of Old Trafford. What a day it's been. Could this day have gone any better for Chelsea?
This is the Chelsea I think we had all gotten used to watching and expected this season, and haven't really necessarily turned up in a way that we expected this season. They saved it for when it mattered, and it is amazing what having, not having the legacy on the line, but having Emma Hayes' last game on the line and knowing that they needed to win pretty emphatically to ensure Man City didn't catch them. It's amazing how that drove them. They were relentless, like unstoppable today. I can't actually believe how much they kind of decimated Manchester United, who I think are still in Wembley.
I don't know where they are. I think they might have melted into the floor or disappeared into a kind of like a fireball of ashes. That was the only way to describe what happened today. I think going into this game, obviously I had big expectations. I was like, oh, Man United are going to be the absolute title stoppers. They're going to change history. This is how it's going to happen. And then all of a sudden, the first half was absolute destruction. And I think by the fourth goal, that was the most disappointing thing. I think by the fourth goal, you could look over to the bench, and we said, let's have a look at the bench and see how that's going to play out. I had literally the Man City Aston Villa score on my leg, on my phone. I looked over, saw Emma Hayes rubbing her hands together when that fourth goal went in. And then I was like, no, the nail is already on the coffin.
You know she's comfortable when the fans are singing, asking Emma Hayes how many goals, and she turns around and tells them 5, 6. You know she's because she wouldn't do that if it was 1 or 2-0. Like she wouldn't. She'd be more reserved than that, I think. And the fact that she was comfortable and to be able to go, yeah, it's fucking fine. Yeah, and then she was giving it this at times.
She was in her element.
Guro Wron was doing it.
On.
They were all giving it this, and they're a frightening prospect when they play like that. But I also think there was an element of Manchester United just not turning up, which is such a shame, because it could have made for quite a... I mean, it was an entertaining game if you're a Chelsea fan, but it could have made for a more entertaining day if it had been tighter.
Let's talk about how it all ended. Let's talk about post-game, the post-match scenes, the Millie Bright, Emma Hayes lifting the trophy together. Like, how did that feel for you? Because it was iconic. It kind of felt like that was a seminal moment in women's football, that you kind of saw the end of an era. The kind of like the emotion of it was huge. I
think actually before the final whistle even went, Hayes kind of called her bench up to her on the side of the pitch, and they had, I don't know who it was, had their arms around her.
Sam Kerr was walking along the sidelines.
They were waiting for the final whistle together, and that was very special. The end of the game scenes were brilliant. They all came over to the Chelsea fans who were behind me, so I was kind of in the right place at the right time. And it was a very emotional trophy lift, I think, for Emma Hayes and for Millie Bright as well. They've kind of done this together for quite a while. I know Eriksson was captain for a while, but Millie Bright was always right there as well. So it was a special one, and seeing Fran Kirby score as well, coming on, scoring. I think there was a lot of emotion in that Chelsea team, and I think as well, not just seeing those players be finishing at Chelsea, but seeing players who haven't won the title before winning the title
all day
was pretty special too.
But I think when you look at like the logistics of like where they'd actually set up the stand, it was like in front of it was a beautiful corner.
I was delighted.
Of blue, and it was like right in front of them. The fireworks are popping off, like the celebrations, the gold streamers, and like I was obviously in the Man United section, and I was like kind of like looking away, trying to make conversation with other people. I was like, I don't know what's going on, but there seems to be something happening in the background over there. But it was like, and the sun was like happened to be shining in that corner as well. I was like, everything that kind of like you wanted from the day happened in that beautiful little corner there.
It made missing the first 4 goals down the other end of the pitch worth it, because I was in the perfect place for the trophy lift. It was a glorious day for Chelsea. She got a trophy, which I think is...
Didn't see that happening.
No, well, it nearly fucking didn't, Chloe. They were falling by the wayside like dominoes as the season went on. So I think, it's a nice way to top off 5 in a row as well. I don't think we'll see that dominance for a while, because I think as the game gets better, it's going to be harder to have that dominance. And I think you can see that by the fact that different teams have won the different trophies this season. And I do think that's quite important for the growth of the game. So yeah, it was a nice way to end, I think, for her. You know, she's wearing a Chelsea jacket as well.
You look so pensive, like so like nostalgic about it.
It is a bit though, because like when I think about it, when we started Girls in the Ball, Chelsea were, you know, barely a team. They were fighting relegation. At one point, John Terry had to go into the men's dressing rooms and have them take out their checkbooks to help keep the team afloat. Legend. Well, yeah, but you know, they were a very different prospect back then. And I remember going and watching them in, I can't even remember what the name of the ground was. I'm pretty sure they played in Wimbledon or Merton or somewhere like that at one point, and they were bottom of the table, you know, struggling, and then, you know, they just started to progress, and each season they got better and better, and they chipped away, and it was kind of almost like, you know, once it started rolling, it was hard to stop. And to see it then this season almost stutter to a stop at like the worst possible time, and it's quite a nice way for her to end it. But I think as well it's going to be weird doing women's football and Girls in the Ball without Emma Hayes being around it.
Well, we've got to talk about how they actually reached this achievement today. I think Maya Ramirez was a massive part of this.
Oh.
I mean, probably the single best performance at Chelsea, would you say?
Yeah, I think they would have been delighted that she was fit, because she'd been out since that she played that first Barcelona game.
It
and then
wasn't
she'd
just
been out.
fit though. This was like Maya Ramirez
fit and on fire.
Yeah, this was.
She's unbelievable. There was a real fear in that Manchester United defence. In fact, I saw someone tweet, they actually said it about a specific player, but I'm not going to say it about a specific player, but essentially that the Manchester United defence were looking like the Old Trafford roof. Non-existent. They really struggled to handle her, and I think there was a real fear of actually putting in tackles as soon as she got anywhere near the box, which is how she got that second goal, which was the fourth goal, I think. Like, she just went straight through them. Yeah, I think she's settled in unbelievably well. It's a real contrast to what we sometimes see from Skinner with his newer players, is they take a long time to bed in, or he feels they need a long time to bed in and understand the way they play and understand the Man United way and understand the WSL, and you know, there are a few players we haven't seen much of. In contrast, Emma Hayes goes out, gets Ramirez in last minute on deadline day practically, straight into the team, immediately impacting the game, coming in here, scoring a brace. Like, she's been so important to how Chelsea have actually finished this season, and it's quite exciting to think what she's going to be able to do next season when she's, you know, gotten more comfortable, learned the language, you know, got those
massively.
Relationships with other players. So
You can kind of see like she's taken small steps into becoming mainstream in a way. Like, we saw at the World Cup, and like there was a little bit of a raised profile there. People were like, oh, okay, like it's something a bit spicy about this player. And then all of a sudden, like, January transfer window, record-breaking fee, and everyone's like, okay, well, you know, she's a great player, but like, does she demand a record-breaking fee? And then all of a sudden, she's going on to score goals like that, and like breezing through players in the same way that I suppose Lauren James breezes through players. There's kind of like physicality to her that means that defences are so scared of her. It just felt like, I don't know, like Man United just fell apart. It was like watching Paper Mache?
Paper Mache. Yeah. Oh,
Is that another thing
Is that another thing
I can't pronounce?
We're going to make up a sentence for the end of the season around the Champions League with Rolfo, Bilbao and Paper Mache. No, I agree. Like, Chelsea didn't look like a team where their only trophy was on the line.
Absolutely.
And I think to be able to play with that level of freedom, and like, just Manchester United just kept making the same. They couldn't deal with the speed of Chelsea's transitions. They just, like, it just felt like it was just
but couldn't
rinse and
deal
repeat.
with, or didn't care enough.
Well, no.
That's the question.
But do you want to see another team lift a trophy on your Old Trafford pitch? Like, they went round with the friggin' FA Cup afterwards.
But do you want to end your season getting your first bit of like WSL silverware, having conceded that many goals? Like, I think even if you didn't care about the game in terms of like how it would affect your positioning, you would at least appreciate that ego-wise.
You think there would be enough there
to at least like concede one or two goals, or like make it a competitive game, or like put Chelsea to the wire, or make it kind of like, you know, that kind of like deadline day that you kind of thought it would be. But there was nothing from United. I'll be honest.
After Chelsea scored those two, and then United hit the crossbar, they scored those two, and then there was a lull for a bit. And I almost feel like if United had scored that one to make it 2-1, maybe it could have been, but even just a little bit tighter. The fact that they didn't, Chelsea almost went, oh, okay, that was their chance. Chelsea had 4 shots in the first half, and they scored 4 goals from them. That is incredible.
And Man United had how many shots on target?
But like, you know, being clinical was something Chelsea struggled with at the beginning of the season. So to be finishing a game like that, yeah, unreal. But at the same time, it is that combination of Manchester United just not turning up.
Well, let's also talk about the other threat for Chelsea. I mean, Fran Kirby, obviously last game with Chelsea, absolutely iconic. There was a massive roar from the crowd. I hadn't appreciated that Fran Kirby was kind of warming up, so I was like, what's the roar for? Like, I know you've scored goals. Like, guys, calm down, Christ. And then she was brought on in the second half, final appearance, and then it was such a ridiculously slick goal that she scored, and like you could see that beautiful like sunlit corner as well of Chelsea exploded because they know how much that meant for her last Chelsea goal, and what a way to finish it.
They were demanding for her to come on, like they were calling for it, and you're kind of thinking, I mean, you're like 5-0 up at this point. Bring them all on, Emma. So it was great. I mean, she's not the kind of player that you would take.
Goalkeeper. Go on.
It's not like you're taking a risk or anything bringing her on. But
get on Hannah Hampton up front.
It was special to see her come on. And to score that goal and to celebrate in front of the fans and to celebrate in front of my camera lens. Thank you so much.
Great news.
Her and Guro Wron was on one today. She was such a vibe. So another player that I thought stood out. Erin Cuthbert was brilliant.
Yeah.
You know, there was a lot of different players that were absolutely on their game today, and I think that's kind of where Chelsea has struggled in recent games, is that players have been good, but they've not been at their best, and it's what they've needed. So, you know, to think about that Spurs game where they only won 1-0 and Spurs could have got an equaliser, to come over here and do what they did, ridiculous.
Well, let's focus a little bit on Manchester United, and I say that with such a heavy heart and a heavy tone. They were just so easy to play against. It literally felt like it was I don't know, we say this in a kind of cheesy way, but like a training game. It didn't feel like they turned up, like they cared. It was like, obviously off the back of like the FA Cup and winning that, it kind of felt like their season was already over. I mean, if you heard that in the background, that's a producer Finn's sunglasses. He's already on holiday in his head. It's a windy day in Manchester at the Old Trafford. But it felt like Chelsea continuously kept going to the byline, kept going over and over again in the first half. It felt like deja vu at points. I mean, Man United's only real chance came midway through for the first half when they clipped the bar from a corner. I mean, what were you kind of thinking of in terms of Man United and how little threat they really possessed?
Yeah, it's almost like no one was really on the same wavelength. That's what it felt like. And like Lucia Garcia, she felt like
one last time.
She really felt like she was desperate to try and get something. You know, she felt like she was dragging the team, and she'd be winning balls and bombing down the wing. I thought Ella Toone looked a bit like that as well, a bit like she was getting frustrated, but she was doing her best to kind of drag players. But Garcia would come down and she'd send a ball in and there'd be nobody there, and it was like, well, stop doing that. Like, hold up the ball, like do something, try something different. I think that's something we've seen before with Manchester United, is if plan A isn't working, they sometimes struggle to have a plan B or implement a plan B sometimes. Now Mark Skinner might accuse me of not watching the games, which he did in the post-match press conference. Not specifically me, but just the journalists generally. But he wants nicer coverage. But I think when you lose 6-0, you're going to get some criticism, unfortunately.
Doesn't every manager want nicer coverage?
Well, that's not our jobs. We're not cheerleaders. We're here to talk about the football. And
but also, it hasn't really affected his prospects. I mean, he's just been granted this amazing new contract extension.
We won the FA Cup. We gave you loads of kudos last week, which you absolutely deserved. But you've just been battered 6-0 at Old Trafford, so it's not great, is it?
I think some criticism is probably warranted.
A little bit.
It was quite nice to see kind of the Chelsea fans saying, like, we want you to stay, Mark Skinner.
That would have put him in a bad mood. That was absolutely savage.
That was quite good banter. But I was speaking to like a couple of the Man United lot like after the game, and you know, I think there was that kind of sense that they've absolutely dropped off this season compared to how they were, and we keep saying like, they overachieved last season, this season wasn't to be, but like I do feel like now there is a bigger pressure on them to kind of maintain and build on what they've got. Like, they've got the FA Cup win, but now they're going to be expected to keep going into and pressing into the Champions League again. At least I feel like if they don't reach that stage again, that could signal, because it's only a 1-year contract, and at the end of the day we've seen so many managers not fulfill their contracts and go after 3, 4, 5 months. Do you think he's still kind of, whilst he's got the year, I suppose that doesn't really mean much in terms of, if you're not achieving in the first couple of months, you could be out by Christmas.
Well, we've seen that with Mel Phillips. How long was she in charge? How well has that gone? R.I.P. I think, look, he's signed the contract. They've won a trophy. That will be huge for their season, and it will be something they'll massively lean on. It's something they're going to be able to use to try and bring players in. You know, we're a trophy-winning club, and I know that they won the trophy by being promoted into the WSL, but winning the FA Cup is huge and hugely prestigious. So that will be seen as, you know, a massive thing for this season. I think maybe the shine has come off it ever so slightly, finishing the way they did, and I believe it means that Liverpool finish above them.
Yep.
So, you know, that's not ideal either, but they'll build on it. You know, it depends who they keep in, who leaves, who they get in. It will be an interesting summer for Manchester United, I think.
Do you feel like this kind of summer could potentially be a summer that they focus on their defence? Because like this game, more than anything, I think exposed them in terms of like how easy it was to kind of pick apart passes, how easy it was to get to the byline, do those cut across.
They need goals as well, though.
I felt so sorry for Mary Earps. There were so many times that she was frustrated by the lack of like being so exposed at the back. Sometimes it felt like you had a defence in front of you who just weren't present. Like, do you feel like?
I think defence is definitely an area they need to improve, but so they need to in front of goal. They've been so poor in front of goal this season in terms of the quality of chances they've been creating. So both ends of the pitch, I think, you know, they could get a couple of experienced heads in defence. I think that'll be really valuable. But equally, they need a really good goal scorer up front as well. So yeah, we'll see. You know, hopefully they'll be investing. It's always difficult to find an absolute bowler of a number 9, but I did hear there's one available down in London, who had the perfect final game, by the way. Shout out Vivianne Miedema, getting an assist and a goal with practically her first touch. God, that's a lovely singing there behind. He's gone. So that will be key. I think this summer is recruitment, and I think that will help them. You know, should they want to get back up and be in that top 4 again and stay in that top 4.
Well, let's talk a little bit about a club that has thrived despite not being kind of avid recruiters this season. I mean, Man City, their season, very passionate, I'd say. Like, it really felt like there was kind of like, at the start of the season, no one was expecting too much from them. Obviously, weren't in Champions League football this season, but it kind of felt like they could be the ones that take the WSL title from Chelsea up until the final day. I mean, to kind of get to a situation where you get it right down to the last day and then you see Chelsea score goal after goal after goal, and you're like, actually, Man City now has to score 5, 6, 7 goals just to kind of get in the title. I mean, how do you reckon they're feeling right now?
I mean, they'll be absolutely gutted, but I don't think people weren't expecting anything from them. I think people were talking about them in the top 3. I think people were talking about Chelsea, Man City and Arsenal in and around that top 3, and a kind of a variety of who was going to win it. And I think, they've settled really well. I think that's massively helped the kind of lack of massive change which they had to deal with last season. They've got a particular style of play that they've absolutely nailed down. The relationships between their front 3 has been massive, and it's been really valuable. You can see that when Bunny Shaw was playing, you know, and I do actually think losing Bunny Shaw was a big blow for them at a key time, because it did ultimately come down to goal difference, which is wild. So I think losing her was a big loss for them. Even today, like, they got the win but it was 1-1 at one point. You know, so it's crazy to think that, but I think they can be pleased with their season. I think they'll be frustrated not to have won anything, because I think they've been probably the most consistent team this season
all day,
which you can take a lot from, but at the end of the day, it hasn't won you a trophy, which would be frustrating. But it'll be interesting to see. I think they will bring in a few heads. You know, they've announced some departures there at 5:15 on the final day of the season. Cheers, guys! An absolute worst time to announce that, by the way. But yeah, there are a number of players leaving. I think there will be a few players coming in to try and, I guess, not just shore up some of the areas, but just offer that depth and quality. And should Vivianne Miedema go there, which is what the rumour is, that could be a really, really interesting signing for them. So
they've got a very spicy new kit out. I'd be tempted.
I'm excited by the summer. I think the summer's going to be really exciting to see all the comings and goings.
Well, we'll talk more about them on Tuesday. On the other hand, what do you reckon the feelings are going to be in the Chelsea dressing room right now? I mean, Emma Hayes' can we get into Emma Hayes' head for a second? Like, it is her absolutely final game. She not only ends it with Man United and the win, but it's an emphatic win. It's a disgusting win. It is like an absolute destruction.
That is absolutely everything she would have wanted today. That is exactly, I don't think she could have picked a better way to end her time at Chelsea. I'm sure she would have liked more trophies, don't get me wrong, but I think finishing today the way she's finished
at Old Trafford, in the sun.
I mean, I'm sure she would have loved it at Stamford Bridge, but you know, to win it so emphatically, to see her players turn up for her the way they have, to score so many goals, really good goals as well, to have Ramirez coming back, you know, to get Fran scoring, it's just the perfect way.
To wear that blue jacket, to wear those individual handcrafted Nike dunks, the Chelsea logo glistening in the sun, what a way to kind of end your
What a way. Hat
reign.
tip, Emma Hayes. Congratulations on a wonderful career, and congratulations on getting your hands on a trophy. Thank God you did.
Absolutely fuming. This day could have gone so differently.
I'm so sorry, Chloe, kind of.
You're not sorry at all.
No, not really.
You couldn't give a shit. Right. Thank you so much for listening. We're back on Tuesday with the main show, looking back on the final day, and there's plenty more coming your way. We're also bringing you a special episode from the game today, exploring Emma Hayes' legacy at Chelsea. We spoke to members of Chelsea's supporters group as well as Jessie Parker-Humphries for their reflection on Hayes' reign and where the club goes next. That's out on Wednesday. Then on Thursday, we're bringing you the Upfront 2023-24 awards. Stay tuned for those. In the meantime, you can find us on Instagram and X/Twitter. I am at Morby_89, Rach is at Girls on the Ball, and we are at Upfront_pod. You can also find us on YouTube at Upfront Pod. See you next week.